like we mentioned, Max Verstappen wins his 14th race of the season. Oscar Piastri finished second. Lando Norris rounded out the podium in third. But it was just a typical dominant performance from Max all weekend long. He's one win away, Laurence, from tying his own record of most wins in an F1 season. Race after race, I feel like we've learned that no matter who he's going against, no matter what track he's on, he just is dominant. It doesn't seem to matter. He's been incredible all season long. And I know we've talked about it throughout the season as we've gotten to this point, but just put a bow on it for us in terms of locking up this championship so early and on a Saturday.
Well, it is exceptional. As you mentioned, 14 wins so far. Last year, he set a new record of 15. Before that, I think it was 13. So the fact that he's 14 with 5 races left to run, he could end up winning 19 races this year, which is basically what Mercedes did at the height of their power as a team, not as a single driver. So it is remarkable, and look, it is fully deserved. And it was a funny situation because we knew going into Qatar that almost certainly Max would be crowned champion that weekend, unless something very strange happened. And then it happened in the sprint race, and I don't know. I mean, Nate will be able to speak to this at being on the ground, but it did seem a bit odd that there was still a race to run the day after his celebrations on the Saturday night. But I think what more can we say about this season of Max Verstappen? It's just been on another level, and I think already we're hearing from Max himself and from Red Bull certainly that they're not expecting it to be the same next year and going forward. Now, I think a little bit of that is they don't want to sound arrogant, they don't want to kind of set themselves up for a fall, but equally it is very unlikely that this kind of thing happens again. This level of domination, it requires so much to come together, and of course then that one person in the cockpit to make the most of it, and that's what Max has done so well. And while we had all this stuff, chaos going on behind, and wheel to wheel racing, drivers taking each other out in Mercedes, drivers vomiting in their helmets, Max, who by his own admission does not consider himself the fittest driver on the grid, was just kind of never really in doubt of a victory. So it's another level. So appreciate it while it's here. And then I think most of us are hoping, apart from hardcore Max Verstappen fans, that at least we see a bit more competition. We see him pushed in slightly different ways next year.
What was it like seeing it wrapped up on a Saturday, and then obviously the celebration that was, and then getting ready for a Grand Prix the next day?
It was very strange. And I think because of everything that followed on Sunday, it didn't feel like the wind had come out of it completely by the end of it. But it was strange because you got to Saturday, and poor Oscar Piastri, first of all, wins the sprint race, superb performance. He gets out of the car and it's like, Max, you won the championship. So, and I don't think we're too upset about that. But I did feel at the end, I was like, it was a weird one, right? Because you've got Max winning the championship by not winning the sprint. So not only have you taken focus away from the Grand Prix, but I feel like you've also kind of ruined the sprint race, because the outcome of the sprint race wasn't what you were talking about by the end of the day, if you know what I mean. Piastri wins the sprint race. It's about Max. Going to the race, Max has already won the championship. It just felt weird to me. And I think that, I think I'm in principle, I'm a fan of the sprint, but I think this was an example of, where it really is maybe not great, if you can win the race away from win the championship away from a Grand Prix itself, because if you tuned into the race on Sunday, it was like, well, Max won the championship yesterday. It was like watching the Super Bowl and being like, well, actually the Chiefs won this yesterday, but they're playing the Super Bowl anyway, just because. You'd be like, okay, that's a bit strange. It may be not a great comparison, but I always like to throw in an NFL reference when I can. But I think it was, what was really telling about it from a Verstappen point of view was that Verstappen, he's his personality, his character, he's like a robot, and I mean that, I don't mean that in a negative way at all. He won the race, he got out of the car and he said, really happy to have won. He was already talking about winning the race tomorrow, and he was just very open about everything. People said, do you think you can match Schumacher and Hamilton's 7 or surpass that? And he said, honestly, I don't know. I don't think he said, I'm just enjoying this moment now because you don't know how long this will last for. And you do get the sense with Max that he's just taking it all in at the moment and just enjoying it while he can, because Laurence is absolutely right. I think that other teams are kind of starting to feel that maybe by the end of next year, they can be in the mix. I actually think that Max, out of all people, wants that a little bit, to be the case again. I think he's enjoying this right now. But he's been dominant this year, and he said this has been his favorite season so far. But I think that deep down, he wants to be racing people on track and beating them, in the fights that he had with Lewis in 2021. I think any driver would want that. But it was odd, and I've got to say as well, there was a great moment in the press conference afterwards when I think a few journalists were trying to get Max to admit that he was basically going to go out and just have a load of beers at the hotel afterwards, because they kept asking him, "What are you going to do to celebrate? What are you going to do to celebrate?" And he kept laughing. And he was like, "Guys, I'm going to be here tomorrow. I'm going to have a sparkling water tonight." And then, I don't think he's the biggest drinker either, Max. So I don't know whether people were trying to get some big story out of him, like, "Oh yeah, we'll see if I'm in a shape to drive tomorrow." But I think it speaks to Verstappen and his professionalism, and also his focus, that he turned up. And I think actually, if anything, he was even more focused on that Sunday than he may otherwise have been. Just and remarkable to see it. And I managed to get one of the Max Verstappen 3-time world champion hats as well. So from a personal perspective, it's the first time I've ever done that. So if you ever see one of those lying around, Laurence, in Austin, you got to grab it. There might be some left, I don't know, but it was very cool to see. And I don't know what fans thought of it going the way it did, but being there, you definitely felt that it was odd. And obviously it adds to this kind of run of, I quite like the quirkiness of Verstappen's championships. Obviously 2021, Michael Massey, maybe quirky is the wrong word there, but different and controversial. 2022 crosses the line in Japan. We don't know he's champion for a bit. There's also been all the cost cap stuff. And then 2023, he wins it on a Saturday. It's like there's always something different and unique about each time he wraps up the championships, which I think is great. He doesn't care about any of that. He was asked all these questions and he was just like, "I don't care, I've won the championship." But he did say it was his favorite one of the three, which I think is quite telling of how good he's been and how good he feels in the car, in the situation right now as well.
Thanks so much for watching ESPN on YouTube. And for more sports highlights and analysis, be sure to download the ESPN app. And for premium content and live streaming, subscribe to ESPN Plus.